Hello, welcome back to the next installment of Swanky Paint Alpha Plus 11 feature updates. What shall we talk about today? I think we're going to look at user interface.
User interface, we have a resize window, which we didn't have before because it used to just be in image new properties. So, what we have here is an image size adjuster, as you can see from the title.
What does it do?
The thing about this is that it understands layers. So if you have like a bunch of layers and they're laid out on the image, you're changing the size of the layer. You're not changing the size of the entire image. So you've got to, it has to know the layer layout and it has to know the size of each layer, and then it works out the rest. So if I was to like increase the layer layout, this is basically the same as adding layers. So if I do a resize, you'll see it's made it 3 by 3. So we've got the original one plus another 8.
That's cool.
So this is like the same as adding and removing layers when you adjust the layer layout.
Great.
The other thing you can change is the excuse me, is the width and height. So as well as like changing how many layers we have, so let's actually go to that so you can see it happening. This bit here gives it the width and the height, and up here we see the anchors, so you can decide to have it scale with sticking to the top left, the bottom right, or in the center. So center and middle means it's going to take the center bit. So it's a 64 by 64 layer, and we're going to grab 32 by 32 pixels from the center of it. So when I do the resize, see, it shrinks down.
Voila.
Magical. So that's really nice if you've got sprite sheets. So,
sprite sheets will be very useful for this.
Let's load a sprite sheet here. Yeah. Actually, I did get one prepared. Here's a gramophone. Right, so this is a sprite sheet. As you can see, it's loaded in. It's 8 layers, but it's not represented here. The reason is that this lags so that it doesn't like reset it every time you load in a new image. So if you've got this set to what you want to resize stuff to, it doesn't forget it. So to get the current values, do reset values, and it'll pull them from the current image.
Right.
So if we take this and I say, well, I'm just going to throw away half of that white space because it's just like, far too much. So let's change that from 64 down to 32. And if we apply that, we'll see the layers are shrunken.
Ooh.
So you can do that to trim off a few pixels.
Very optimized.
Stuff like that. You can see it's thrown away some of the detail because there's a reason it was 64 by 64 to start with.
Yeah. Well.
And if we... single layer is like quite a useful one because it basically takes away the layers.
Right.
So it makes it 1 by 1. So you're resizing the entire image. So if I resize this to whatever value, let's just pick a random number. It's gonna grab it out of the center, and it's just that one, the first layer.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you wanted to resize the entire image, you'd have to take away the layers first. So actually we'll undo, because obviously we have undo. And if we go to layers, actually, this is where it's there. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do that. So at the moment, it's, again, reset values, gets the current ones. So it's 4 by 2, 32 by 32. So we're going to change this down to 1, and that down to 1. So that's going to throw away all the layers. Now... So
it's just a flat image now?
It's now just one layer. So if we do a sort of a random resize, we'll take the center of the entire thing. So the thing is, you've got to be aware of the layers, I guess is what I'm trying to say. If you've broken it into layers, it's gonna affect the layers. So you need to take the layers away if you want to just resize the image.
There is a slight guide to seeing if you have layers adjusted or layers enabled on your image. There is a slight grid-like pattern, checkerboard pattern.
You can see where the layers start and end because it's checkerboarded. So if I re-chop it, you can see it goes away.
Yeah.
If I go back, it comes. So you can see it appearing and disappearing there. But it's quite subtle.
It's very subtle, yeah.
But it's just enough to let you know what layers are where.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the layers. I think we'll just go through all of the windows, maybe.
Sure.
Because there's quite a few of them.
It's quite a few. I mean, if you look at the Alpha 10 user interface, if you're not on the experimental build, on the beta opt-in on Steam, then this is basically something very new and a huge departure from the previous user interface of version 9 even. So it's all been streamlined, I suppose.
Yeah, it's been moved around.
It's been moved around, it's streamlined, and all of the options that's usually in like two layers, actually, the height is quite thick at the top for all the functions. Now it's just this one
long streamlined bar.
long streamlined box.
That's if your window is wide enough. If you make like a really tiny window, then it still double stacks. So it's like it automatically lays itself out. So this is the image properties. Previously, these were just in settings.
Yeah.
So now these are more sort of applied to the image. So you can see that it's changing the snap and the size of the black line. Yeah.
Yeah.
So these were previously in properties. Bloom's always fun. So these were previously in properties, but now they've got their own sort of image thing, and that's where we have the wrap as well.
Yep.
So this is where you find all of these properties if you've missed them. And you can see we've got some strange rendering modes, I guess.
I suppose rendering modes, yeah.
Mostly scanline is
Scanlines.
nice. Scanline is nice. It's good for exporting. I like the look of an exported scanline.
Yeah. And
a nice bit of bloom, you know. Put a bit of bloom on the top, makes a difference. You can draw with the bloom or without the bloom. It's your choice. So that's the image properties. I'll hide that window. What else do we have? So we've got new, which is remarkably like the resize window.
Yeah.
But you get to choose presets. So these are like presets for various sort of retro things. So we've got a Commodore 64 screen, ZX Spectrum screen.
Presets are completely different from palettes. If it's not obvious, because it involves the attribute flash and the screen sizes, and if you're into very retro stuff, or if you want to pick the certain dimensions of an old school system, then you pick the presets first, and then you can choose a different palette if you are not so traditional, I suppose.
Yeah, apparently MSX is 256 by 192.
Oh.
I don't know that, but I guess I researched that at some point. ZX Spectrum is 256 by 192.
Also.
That sounds about right.
Okay.
EGA 320-200. I'm not going to argue with that. So yeah, just going to create a new image. This is an EGA image, obviously.
With bloom, apparently.
The bloom is on.
Yeah, so this is where you create new images.
Then we have load and save, which are the file requesters. Export is like save, but it's meant to export like a final artwork. So depending upon what you call it, so by default it says fat pixel. So fat pixel will export it with bloom and
all of the effects you put
all the effects applied. So it should look as the same as it looks on your screen when you're drawing it, when you export. If you just save it normally, what you'll get is like a really tiny image.
Very tiny.
Because pixels are quite small.
Perfect, pixel by pixel.
But it's just the pixels you've edited.
Also, you can edit the size of your fat pixels by going to image properties and choosing the X and Y sizes of your fat pixel.
So that'll change how big the screen is when you export it, because it's kind of a scale for the pixels, so you can export it like really huge.
So that's like 1 pixel is actually 18 pixels large. So really huge files. And obviously you can export it as an SVG. So if you want vector images of your pixel artwork, just change the extension
PNG to
SVG, and you'll get a vector file from your artwork.
You won't get any of the fancy bloom and stuff on top.
No, you get the original pixels. The bloom and stuff only applies to PNGs, basically. It doesn't even apply to GIFs, doesn't it? No.
GIFs are very paletted. So yeah, image processing properties, we sort of covered that before.
We talked about this before. And
history, again, we covered that before.
Yeah.
These are like extra things. I've hidden the delete things down here to make it harder to
accidentally close your image.
So if you want to close an image, you've got to come into the delete menu. All of these windows, if you're wondering, can be accessed by here. So this is like a sort of control of the window system. So the most obvious one you want to do is to hide the window.
It's just a window menu. But
you can shrink it. As you can see, it scales itself, so the text changes. Reset it to the default size. and you can hide it. So all of it, when you rearrange the interface like this, once you've got it set up how you want, you can do config save, and that will remember the current layout. So the next time you load Swanky Paint up, it'll be, the windows will all be positioned where you put them.
Yeah.
So you can kind of, configure it. She likes to have
I like my tools to the right.
On the right.
My previews to the left.
Yeah. So you can move all of this stuff around. And like I was trying to say, you can get to the windows from any window. So if you wanted to do a new image, you could actually get to it from there. So you don't have to go in these menus. You can find all of the windows. As long as you've got one window open, you can get to the rest.
Like a window inception.
It is.
Keeps going into windows, more windows.
And yeah, if you go to the corners of the window, you can drag
resize
it around.
Resize it manually. Yeah.
It's a bit hard to... Yeah, there we go. It's very thin.
Yeah.
But they're there somewhere. And the easiest one is to just reset. And then double or shrink if you want it bigger or smaller, which covers most of the things you need to do. And I think, all of the rest are like fairly obvious. This thing over here is a window now, so you can turn it on and off. The other thing we have is if you hit escape, it hides
all of your windows.
If you want to draw full screen, you need to hit escape to show and hide all of the stuff that you need for picking up.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. The trace and UV map, they're a bit old, but they still work. So trace lets you load in an image and trace over it.
Background image that you can't access, so it's just sort of there in the background.
UV map lets you load in a 3D object and draw the texture. I don't think we've covered this in.
I think we have covered this in version 9. I think.
Yep.
9C, which is the video before this series.
And Diva, again, we covered that in a couple of episodes ago. So that's where all of the windows are now. Mm-hmm. And obviously we've got the menus, which if you have a bit of trouble, you see these menus pop on and up all the time. If you actually press the mouse button down, then it keeps the menus up, so it's a bit easier to get to stuff. So you just
click and hold.
So if you click and hold the mouse button, the window stays up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they pop up as soon as you hover over it, which is, it's kind of a little bit annoying, but it's also the fastest and easiest way of doing it. So I don't know. Maybe we'll change how that works.
We'll change it in the future if it gets too annoying.
If it gets too annoying, yeah. But for now, it's how things work, and it's good enough.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's everything.
I think that's everything.
I think that's everything.
Yeah.
I can't remember. We've probably forgotten something.
We'll probably come out and say, "Oh no, we should do another video next time." But until then, thanks for joining. Bye bye.